So let's keep going. So when we left off, we had a pretty nice GUI. Source. Okay, so here's what we had so far. We had, we had a lot. All right, so we had some radio buttons, a text box, a bunch of labels. We had checkboxes. Okay, we had this field right here, special instructions. Okay, so what was the data type in here? Does anyone remember what this box was called? What actual specific swing component? JText area, right? And what was surrounding this JText area? What component? Yeah, I think it was a JScroll area. Okay, or JScrollable, something like that. Okay, and then over here we had, what do we call this control? A J what? Combo box. What do we call this control? A JList, right? All right, what do I call this control up here with the customers and the border? Not label. What do I call this control up here that has the customers border? Does anyone remember? A J. I'll give you a hint. It starts with a J. Yeah, J panel. Who said it? Trevor. Let's give Trevor a round of applause. All right. So if you remember, we were actually binding objects to our J panel, right? This wasn't just text, but we were actually binding objects, and we had that really complicated code. If you remember, it said something about render. There it is. So I basically added this new event handler, and what event it was handling was when the cell is being rendered. Okay. What that basically means, render is another word for drawing in kind of computer science, graphics kind of lingo, right? When you render something, you're drawing it. So when I'm drawing the contents of that cell, it sets off some event, okay? What I'm doing is this code is basically capturing that event, and it's doing something, okay? It's just doing this little line of code right here where it says, hey, instead of printing out the toString, I want to print out .getFirstName, okay? Maybe I want to do something else, and I would encourage you, a lot of times you may not have a method that really does what you want, so I would really encourage you, if something like this happens, let me go to my person, for instance, and I can just make a new method, right? Well, I can literally say public void get display name or something like that, right? And then I decide exactly what I want it to be, right? So maybe I have return first name plus, who knows, maybe I want to put a dash in there, plus last name. Okay, so now instead of, got to return string, right? Okay, so now right here I just have get first name, right? So I can play that and it's going to grab the first names in there. However, I can do my new method now, right? I can say get display name. Now I'm going to get the first and the last name with this dash in there, okay? So basically, don't be afraid to go back into your common kind of core classes and add some methods that just return strings just for the purpose of displaying them in your GUI, okay? That's a good thing to do. That's an okay thing to do. Danny Davis, everyone. All right, so there's some other things that we can do. All right, so far we've done this kind of weird handler on the cell render, but for the most part, what kind of events have we been handling? When buttons are clicked. Okay, so it turns out there's a lot of other different types of events that we can add, and so I'm going to add a new one to this list. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here. And I'm going to go to my designer. Okay? So I'm going to go to my designer. I'm just going to scroll over so I can actually see if I can get rid of this stuff. The screen is so tiny. All right, so All right, so I'm going to click on my list. All right, I'm going to right-click it. So remember before, if we wanted to add an event, we would say something like this. We would say, all right, add event handler. But you see for the list, there's no action. Right? Remember that was the one we would always click on. So if I have the button, right, I could always say something like this. I could say add event handler, action, action performed. Okay, and this was kind of our default action for when I click on a button, whether it's a radio button, a traditional button, or even a checkbox. I think checkbox, actually, I'm not sure if checkbox uses the same one. Let's see. Add event handler. Yeah, so action has the same thing. But a list isn't really, we don't think of it the same. We don't think of a list as having a bunch of buttons to select. Well, we think of it as having a bunch of items in it, right? And maybe we can click them, but we wouldn't really be clicking them to perform an action typically, okay? But we can perform actions, and actually we might actually do it quite often. So if I right-click on here, I can say add event handler, okay? And what I want to do typically, though, if you don't have an action option, typically the options that are going to be the most relevant are these mouse ones, okay? So maybe like mouse motion, mouse moved. I could literally, every time I move my mouse over this component, I could do something, okay? Every time I mouse click on it, I could do something, okay? So let me just try something. I've actually not done this in a while, so hopefully it works. But let me add a handler, okay? So what I first want to do is okay, so I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to say, all right, add event handler. I'm going to say mouse motion, mouse moved. Okay, so I now have this event handler in there. And I'm going to basically, like I said, I'm going to just kind of yank that out of there and I'm going to move it down into my create events. Just to kind of keep all my events together, because I think it's a lot easier to handle your code if you keep them all together. All right, so every time I move my mouse, I'm going to do something. Okay, so what if I did this? JOption pane dot show message dialog null a. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to get. Does anyone anticipate that this is going to be annoying? Okay. So every time if I sneak around the back, it gets me, right? What if I go try to cross? All right, so as soon as I enter the plane, all right, as soon as my mouse, because I only put the handler on this control right here, okay? So whenever I'm over here, it's calling this event, right? So if I hit enter, you can see as long as I'm over there, it's going to keep popping up, okay? So let's maybe try to do something a little more practical. Okay, so I actually can't remember what I get from this argument. I'm guessing that I get, yeah, perfect. I get a get x and a get y. Okay, so this is something you may want to do. I've done this before for certain applications. I may do something like this instead. I may say, hey, what this list customers, what I really want to do is display the coordinates. Okay, so this customers, and I may say something like this, set tooltip. Okay, and then I simply say arg0. Okay, so you're always going to get some kind of event passed in to your event, right? This was done for me automatically. Here it's a mouse event. Down here is this default list cell render. When we were doing the actions, it was this action event, right? I'm sorry, up here it was just a bunch of stuff. Okay, but you'll get some stuff that's automatically filled in for you, which is really nice. What I would recommend is, I actually didn't know this had to get X and get Y, because like I said, I haven't worked with this in quite a while. But whatever's in here, just use the dot operator to kind of see what you get. All right, so I'm going to say, all right, get X, and this is going to get me some kind of integer, right? Plus arg0 dot get Y. All right, and then maybe I display it. Okay. All right, so who thinks they know what's going to happen here? What should happen? Okay, so you see what's happening now? Now I can actually move my mouse anywhere around this, and you're going to see it's going to get me the X and Y coordinates of where I am. Okay? So notice, one thing to notice, I got to kind of stop and hover. The top left is the 0 coordinate. Okay, so remember, graphics is always the opposite of what we typically think of when we're graphing things. So typically 0, 0 is in the bottom left, right? It would be down here. However, in graphics, 0, 0 is always in the top left. Okay, so it starts at the top. So just keep that in mind. So if this was, keep in mind I'm doing this on a list control. I could do this on some kind of graphics as well, right? So if I actually was doing something like a simple game, I know that my circle is placed on these particular coordinates, because remember how we did the Facebook banner? We actually said, hey, draw it, starting at this X and this Y pixel. So if I know exactly where my mouse is, I know if I'm clicking on a certain circle or square, if I'm clicking on a certain object that would maybe be in my image, okay? So like I said, I'm just kind of giving you ideas of the type of stuff you could do with some of this functionality. All right, so you can see I can still click, but as long as I stop, I'm going to have that kind of tooltip hovering over there. Okay, so that's a really nice feature you might use at some point. So let's go ahead and add another one. So what I want to do here, okay, so actually check this out. This is pretty cool. If I'm back here, and I'm on my designer, say, oh yeah, you know what, I actually messed up with my event handler. I realized I did it a little bit wrong. Instead of coming back to your source code and kind of like looking for it, right? Maybe I can kind of search for it. What was I doing? I was doing mouse, something with a mouse. So let me kind of look through. Oh, there it is. Okay. What I can do instead is I can just right-click on the object that I added the handler to, and you'll notice it's going to pop up with all the events I have, right? So I can add a new one, or I can click on the one I already created, and it's going to take me right to that code. Okay, so pretty nice shortcut for us. So let's go back. Now what I want to do is I want to add a different type of handler. Okay, I want to add mousePressed. Okay, so I'm just kind of going to show you a few. Okay, so what's the difference between all these? I have mouseClicked, mouseEntered, mouseExited, mousePressed, mouseReleased. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to actually go through all of these and create examples, but I want to show you, okay? The mouseEntered. Boom. Okay, watch my mouse. Boom, it entered. Okay, as soon as it crosses over that threshold, my mouse just kicked off. It just threw a mouseEntered event. Okay, while I'm in here, I've already entered, right? I'm not entering, so it's not throwing off events. As soon as I cross back over, I just created a mouseExit event. Okay. What were the other ones? There was mousePressed, okay? So if I click down right here, now you can't hear it, but I actually haven't unclicked. All right, everyone be really quiet. You hear that? All right, everyone be really quiet. Okay, so that was a mouse click. My finger is still holding, sorry, I'm not doing anything bad with my finger, right? My finger is still holding the mouse, okay? So I just did the mouse click, or I did the mouse press. Okay, this is a mouse release when I let go. Okay? A mouse click is when you press and release, okay? So see how I press down and then I release. That's a mouse click, okay? So if I click on here and then I say, oh, have you guys ever done this where you said, oh, let me click, and you're like, oh shoot, I didn't mean to do that, and you kind of drag it away and you unclick it, okay? So that would have only basically triggered a mouse press, okay? For it to be a mouse click, I have to both click down, press down, and then release. Okay. So depending on what you happen to want to do, you're gonna throw a different one of those. Okay. So I'm gonna do what I want to do is a mouse click. I want to say, hey, if you really meant to do this, if you press down and then released on it, then let's do something. Okay. So add event handler mouse. I'll just say mouse clicked. Okay, again, it's always going to kind of add it the wrong place, so I'll just kind of take it down here. Okay. All right, so at this case, what I want to do is I want to do something like this. Okay, so let's just kind of see what happens. So I'll do my J option pane. Dot show message dialog null, and then I'm going to say click. Okay. All right, so now I'll play this. Okay. So I am over one of these guys. All right, so listen very carefully. So I just click down, I press down, but now I'm going to drag off and release. Okay? So you see nothing happens. All right? Now if I click over here and I come over here and release over there, that's not going to trigger the mouse click. This will actually, it should trigger the mouse released, even though I didn't start it there. Okay? So if I click here and then I release over here, this should do the mouse release over here. All right, so now watch this. Click and then release. Okay? So I get my click. All right, so I can do that anywhere. As long as it's in the we can see, so it looks like I have to keep it pretty stationary, right? If I try to kind of move it a little bit, then that is no longer considered a mouse click. So in order for it to be a mouse click, you know, just based off of evidence of what I'm doing right here, it appears that it has to be basically clicked down and released in the same spot. Okay, so if you move it, see, even if I move it a little bit, it's not working, right? But it's pretty easy to click on this click on it. All right. So what do I want to do? What's this useful for, right? So sometimes what I like to do is when I click on one of these people, let's say that, you know, our superheroes, they probably eat a lot of Chipotle, right? So that's kind of what makes you strong as a superhero. So they probably have a favorite, right? So you can imagine that my superhero, I could go back and actually add, you know, let's say I have my superhero class or my person class. I can make a burrito class, right? And the instance variables would be all the different, you know, burrito bowl or burrito. It could be what type of meat I want. We could have instance variables for what type of sauce, and then maybe just a general string for special instructions. Okay, so this could be my burrito class. My superhero could have an instance variable, which is a burrito, right? So superheroes can have burritos too. They're normal people, just like you and me. Okay, so what you might imagine is, hey, here's some of my usual customers over here. It would be really nice if I click and say, hey, Jane Smith is here, and it basically went through and automatically filled out Jane's default order, the usual, right? That way she could come and say, hey, the usual, right? And then, you know, maybe she's saying, you know what, I'm feeling a little bit bold today. Let me try the steak instead of sofritas. And that way you're kind of modifying her normal order, because this is more likely what's going to happen, right? So whenever you go online, they've got some kind of history of you, right? And they're kind of suggesting things to you based off of your particular information. Okay, so let's, we're not going to go as far as creating a whole burrito class and custom filling these, but we'll do a little bit, right? So, so what I do want to show you is how can I now grab the particular object that was clicked. Okay, so let's see, if I say mouse event, I can't really get an object. I don't really see any get source, get the object on which the event initially occurred. I think that's going to give me the component. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to say, hey, what was the component that I was clicking on? It was a list, right? So what I want to do, well, here it is, right? Here's the list object reference. So what I want to do is simply list customers dot, and I can say get selected value. Okay. Actually, what I want to do is get selected index. Okay. Now this is a little. I could say get selected object. Okay. And that should give me the actual object. But remember, I was using this special, what was it called, a default list model. Remember, so I was using this list model to add objects to. So essentially, this list customers is in sync with my list, my model. So let me go up and grab it. Okay, so let's see. Here it is. So customer list. I'll show you where we did this. Right. So we set the customer list as the model of our component. Okay, and then we call this init customers list. Right, which is called this method. And we were basically adding a bunch of new persons and superheroes to our default list model, or customer list, right? That way, we could just modify this customer list, and it would automatically sync up what we saw in the component, all right? So, like we said, we really just want to be working with this view model, okay? We want to be working with the model and not necessarily directly with the component itself, okay? So because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, Okay, so I want to grab the person, P, so let's say clicked person or something like that, equals, okay, and it's going to be someone from my customer list. Well, which one? Well, I'm going to get the element at list customers dot get selected index. Okay, so remember, this customer list is what's actually holding the objects. Okay, it's what's holding the objects. When I say list customers, so this is the actual component, get selected index, this is just kind of saying the index, and it's kind of mapping it to this other list right here. Okay, so I'm just saying, hey, get the one. They're basically in sync as long as we always work with this guy right here. Okay, so I'm saying, hey, get me the element from the list at this index. Okay, so I can kind of prove it to us by saying person, and now I'm going to say, all right, clicked person dot toString. Okay, so now when I click Jane, it's going to say I am a 12-year-old female and my name is Jane Smith. Remember our friend, our 70-year-old female Esther Obama. Because I trust you, my social security number is, and we have Clark Kent, right? I am a 20-year-old male and my name is Clark Kent. Also because I trust you, my social security number is. I'm also a superhero with X-ray vision abilities, an unfortunate weakness of kryptonite, and an amazing sidekick known as Wonder Woman. Let's give a round of applause for Wonder Woman. Okay? All right. So we might do something like this. Okay? So at this point, we have complete access to the particular person that I clicked on. Right? You saw that. No matter who I clicked on in my list, it was going to pop up with their information. Right? So I have access to that person. So at this point, I could actually say something like this, right? Clicked person dot get burrito. If I did do this, right? Get burrito dot has hot sauce. Right? So maybe I have some method like this, and my burrito has hot sauce. So I can now come and I would say chk hot sauce dot set selected. Okay. So assuming that I actually had this I had a burrito in my person, right? They could have a burrito as an instance variable. That burrito could have has hot sauce, just a Boolean true or false, right? Then I could simply do something like this. Hey, set. I got an error because it doesn't exist, right? But if I look over my design, right, it's basically going to find this hot sauce checkbox, and it's going to set it to either true or false depending on what this particular person's burrito has in that hot sauce. Okay, so since we don't have that, let's just try to do something a little bit more not as useful on a generic level, but still kind of give us the point, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, if clicked person dot get first name, let's get display name, right? So get display name, because that has their first and their last name, dot contains, and I'll say something like this, Clark so maybe I'll say dot contains dot there was a contains that had ignore case, so to upper. Okay, so the upper hand version of my first name contains Clark, okay, and display name to uppercase dot contains Kent. Okay. Then what I want to do, I feel like I have a mismatch here. Or maybe it's because I didn't write any code. Okay, I think we're good. right, so what I want to do now is I just simply say checkbox called hot sauce dot, what was it? HK dot, okay, is selected is true. Okay, I'm sorry, false, because he's got like the heat vision. He's gonna make it hot himself. He doesn't want to waste time, Chipotle, them, you know, making the sauce hot. Okay, so I'm sorry, not is selected, but set selected. Okay, so set selected is false. Okay, otherwise we'll just do the opposite, right? So else hot sauce, yes, true. Okay, so now what we're going to see, so this is a common thing I might do, is depending on who I click on, right? You notice that, uh-oh, what's happening? Where's Clark? There's Clark. Doesn't seem to be working. Larry Boy likes, oh yeah, right, this makes sense. So Clark doesn't want the hot sauce, right? So when I click on him, hot sauce disappears. Anyone else, hot sauce, they like it. Okay, so you can imagine how I would basically program that. So maybe I would have the particular customer's order, their favorite order, and I would basically preset that, this set of all these fields for them. Okay, all right, so any questions so far? Okay, so this is a lot, right? So what I don't want you to do is get overwhelmed with all these details. Okay, I'm not going to make you memorize these. I'm basically exposing you to as many controls as possible, and this is why I'm putting the videos, so you can come back and use them as you want. Montrell.
Can we make the model dynamic?
What's that?
The model list, can we make it dynamic where it changes? As in, like, we can go in and add people and take people away?
Right, yeah, we did that on Monday, I think.
Okay.
Were you here on Monday?
No, I was showing a transcript.
Okay, great. So basically, if you look at the video I sent, we do a lot of that, where we basically remove people, we add people. I mean, basically, if I wanted, right, here's my event handler. I can say something like this. I can say customer list dot add element new person. Okay, so now every time I click, I'm going to get a new person in there. If I want to remove it, right, I can say customer.list.remove. I can say remove at, and then I pass it a certain index, right? So let me remove the third person, which is really the fourth person, right? The 0 index. So this time I'm going to add some dude, John Doe, and then I'm going to say 0, 1, 2, 3. I should see Jimmy Bartholomew. It's going to disappear. Maybe. Yeah, there we go. So Jimmy disappeared. Esther. So we're basically just adding and removing one person every time. So Jim Doe's taking over our list. Sorry. Dan Grissom remains, though. He refuses to leave. Okay. But that's the short of how we do that. Okay, so list clicking. All right. So what I want to kind of go into now is pop-ups and then menus. Okay, so you notice every program you use typically has some kind of menu at the top. Okay, so really nice menu. You can see I can have images over there to the side and all kinds of neat stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and explore how we would do that. Okay, so here we are on our designer page. Okay, so I want to scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see that there is this menu kind of bar right here that we haven't really looked at yet. Okay, so if I click on the menu bar, you'll notice that I have a few options. Okay, so I have JMenuBar, JMenu, JCheckBoxMenuItem, JRadioButtonMenuItem, JMenuItem, and JPopupItem, or pop-up menu. Okay, so there's a few things we can do with these. Very common functionality that you might want to have in your program. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and add a menu bar. That's the first thing we want to do. Okay, so a menu bar is basically this whole thing up here. Okay, so literally I just click on it, and then I come over here. Okay, so let me kind of give us a little bit more room, and it will basically tell you, hey, menu bar would be placed here. Like, it doesn't actually give you any other options, because this is the only normal place to put a menu bar. Okay, so if I just click it, add it up there, it's going to add it. All right. If I don't do anything else, you're going to see my program is basically going to look the same. You might be able to kind of tell the shadow may look a little different. Something's going on up there, but basically nothing's happened yet. Okay. So now I have a menu bar. I need to add menus to my menu bar. Okay. So let me add menu. I'll add this one. Okay, and I'll just say file. Right. This is typically what we see. Something like file. Okay. So you'll see it added mn file. It's a local variable at this point. We may want to convert it. No, it's a instance variable. And let's maybe add one more. So I'll say, all right, JMenu. Just click right to the side of it, and maybe I have edit. Okay. So now when I click play, you'll see I now have my file and edit menus. Okay. There's nothing in there. I can't really do anything, but they're there. Okay. All right. So now, in order to actually get this to work, I need to now add menu items. Okay. So I add the menu bar. To that, I add a menu. Okay. That's kind of like the pop-up thing. And then to the menu, I want to add specific menu items. Okay. So the first menu item I probably want to add. So over here, JMenuItem. You notice if I just hover over, it will kind of expand them, and it'll tell me add item here, right? So I just do that. I click where I see that red, and then I might say something like this, exit. All right. So file, exit. So now when I click play, I have file, exit. If I click it, nothing happens though, right? What would I expect to happen when I click file, exit? What's that? Exit, right? So basically, I need to add some kind of handler. Okay, so this is basically a button at this point. Okay, when they click on it, I'm going to handle it the same way I would click a button. So let me go to it, and I'm just going to right-click, and I'm going to say Add Event Handler, Action, Action Performed. Okay, so again, I'll take this, and I'll take it down to my events, all the way at the bottom. Okay, so when they click exit, right, the very simplest thing I could do is I could just say system.exit. Okay, and this is basically just going to shut my program down. So I say exit. So that's okay, right? That is somewhat acceptable. But realistically, what typically happens when you click exit on a program, on a good program?
Would you like to?
Yeah, it says something like, "Are you sure?" Right? Like, did you really mean to do this? Okay, so what I might do, and there's a million and a half ways that I might choose to handle this event, but I think I can do something like this. Okay, so let me do JOption pane dot show confirm dialog. Okay, so null. Are you sure you want to exit? Okay, so this actually should return something, an integer. Okay, so int return equals. Okay, so then what I can do is I can say if return equals, I don't actually know how to get dot, here we go, this is probably right here. So JOption pane dot, maybe yes. Was there a yes on there? Let's see what options pop up. Okay. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to say exit. Are you sure? Okay. So I have yes, no, cancel. Okay. So let's see. JOption pane dot. Yes option. Okay. Let's try this. If it's the yes option, then I'm going to actually close my program. Otherwise, so exit, if I say no, stays, right? If I say cancel, it stays. If I hit X, it stays. Say exit, it works. Okay. So you may want to have something like that in a program. And on top of that, you may do something else before you exit, right? I would highly encourage you, if you're writing a real program, what you're realistically going to do is maybe elegantly shut down program. Okay, so what that really means is something like, save any work into file or database, right? So when they close the program down in a normal way, I should have some kind of code that is handling the program for me, right? It's saying, all right, you were kind of working on something. Let me go ahead and just save that for you, or depends on how we want to do our program. We might ask them, hey, do you want to save your work? And they'll say yes, and then we save it. Otherwise, we just trash it, right? So it's really up to you as a programmer and how you basically expect and think your users will want to interact with your program and how you would basically handle this. Yeah, Zach?
Why is the variable ret an integer?
What, return?
Yeah.
So this is like an enum type sort of deal, almost. I don't know if it technically is, but it's just passing back a number. So this, when I say JOption pane, depending on whether I click yes, no, or cancel, it's going to pass back a number, which is probably just 0, 1, or 2, to be honest. And 0 happens to mean yes, 1 happens to mean no, 2 happens to be confirmed. So that's just their way of kind of mapping it. I think they had a nice pop-up right here, maybe. Yeah. Not sure they'll have it in here either. So returns an integer indicating the option selected by the user. So it doesn't tell us exactly what the mapping is of those integers, but it just returns that. Okay. All right. So if I want, okay, I can maybe do like an exit. All right. So let me go out and get another icon or something. So I'll say, all right, let me go out to Google. Free icons, free credit report, in case you need one. Okay, so exit, right? So maybe I just do exit, and this looks pretty good, right? So maybe I'll do this. I'll do a square theme. Okay, so I have my exit. Okay, so I'll come into my folders. Dan 225. This is WindowBuilder, source, WindowBuilder, resources. Okay, so I got my monkey. I want to see what the resolution was here, so I can see that it's 128. So I'm going to put that in there and just say 128 exit.128 underscore 128. Okay. You want to make sure that you get PNGs. Okay, so you want the background to be clear. That's what a PNG typically does. Else, if it's a white block, it's going to look really ugly because your menu is gray, right? And you'll have this kind of big, ugly white border. So make sure to always get PNGs or something even better. Okay, so now I have that in there. I can go back to my File Explorer, okay? And I just refresh, remember? So refresh. There's my, you can see my exits in there. Okay, so now let me go back to my designer. And I can just click on this just like I did before, right? So I click on the actual exit, and you'll see there's an icon property row right here. So I click on it, and I just say, all right, class path resource. Let me go find my exit. Oh, no. Hey, it works. Okay. So let's see. There's probably a way. That's one way. I think that there's a way to set the size, right? So here's a bunch of properties. Let's see if there's anything else under my icon. A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, icon. What's that?
Oh, yeah, maximum size 32,000 pixels.
So maybe maximum height, I just say like, probably like 12. I don't think this is a good way to do it, honestly. Yeah, let's see. There is a way to do this, okay? Let's see. Here's where I set it. there's a way to do it programmatically. I don't know it off the top of my head. Okay, we'd have to Google for it. It's probably fairly easy. It's probably one line of code. You just have to know the right particular method to set some kind of bounds on the icon. Or maybe I do it to the icon itself. I resize it. But for now, let's just kind of cheat here. I'll go to my resources and I'll like resize it to probably 16 is probably what we want, a 16-bit value. So slow. Okay, so image, let's see, scale image, 16, file export as 16. All right, so now I have a 16 pixel version of this as well. So I can come in, refresh, and then I can come back to my designer. Get rid of all this extra stuff, icon, and just change to the 16. Okay, so there we go. So that's probably the easiest way. You can almost always find 16-bit versions of these icons as well. You could resize it like I did as well. Okay, I would do that probably. There actually may be an easy way to do it in code that way you don't have to worry about what image size you have. But that's a quick and easy way. Okay, so these are some menus. Okay, so finally let's look at a few other menu options we have here. Okay, so if I want to have layers of menus, okay, so let me first add. I can do, instead of adding a menu item, what I can do is add another menu. Okay, so if I add another menu, say layer 1, or maybe I'm going to call this kind of preemptively check box options. Okay, now I may want to go and rename this stuff. I'm not going to mess with that too much right now, but I always want to keep really nice names. So now I click. You can see basically now I have this a little bit of a hierarchy, right? It shows me the arrow even though I hadn't added anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 menu items here. I'm going to add one more just to show you some even more controls. So these will be radio options. Okay. So there I have my 2 menus within a menu. Did I do it wrong? Oh, I did a menu item. Okay, so I'll just delete it. What I meant to do was a JMenu. Okay, so radiations. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to, there's a few other types of menu items I can do. So there's the menu item where it's basically just a button. I click on it and then you take some action. There's also checkboxes. Okay, so I could actually add a checkbox to the checkbox option. So I'll add one right there, and I'll come and add another one. Maybe change the text to checkbox option 1. Okay, and then I'll add one more checkbox. Okay, so now I have checkbox option 2. All right. So the way these work, I've actually never seen these in practice, so I don't know how useful they are. But you can do it. Okay. So maybe I've seen them. I don't know. Actually, this probably maybe these. I don't know if this has any or not. Yeah, there's one. Okay. So the way this works is watch. When I click build automatically, it's now unchecked. Okay. So it's almost like it's just like a checkbox menu item, which is exactly what it is, right? So now I come in here and I can click this once, and now this way it gives me a nice visual indicator of whether this option is checked or not. Okay, so these are obviously going to be independent of one another because they're checkboxes. So later on, at any time in my program, I can say, hey, these guys, all right, so here's my checkbox option 1 menu item. It is a global value. Okay, so if I come into source, I can basically just grab the variable name, which is this guy, I guess. Okay, and then anywhere in my code, maybe in some handler, okay, when I click exit, or when I click on a particular guy, right, I may say something like this, right? If this guy is selected, okay? So at that point, it acts just like a normal checkbox. It just happens to be embedded in a menu. So let's see. Show message dialog null check. Okay, so now when I click something over here, nothing's going to happen unless this is checked. Now you see it's basically reading that value for me. Okay. Okay, so there's one more control. Now these ones I've pretty for sure I've never seen. The radio options. Okay. So here I'm going to grab JRadioButton. I'm going to add one. Uh-oh. Okay, so I'm going to do a JRadioButton. I'm going to add it. What's it not like? Try it one more time and then we'll give up. I think it's not going to work. I don't know why. Doesn't like my radio options. JMenu. Okay, we get the point. I did it earlier and it worked fine. Let's see, just to kind of show you. I have it in another, this guy right here. So if I play him. Oh, so these are radio buttons, right? So if I click them, you'll notice that. And I have actually connected them together. Okay, so R1 and R2. So the way to do that is just the same, right? If I have them existing, then I basically come over here and I say, all right, these two guys. So I click one, I hold down Control and select them both, and I right click and I can basically set the button group, add them to their own button group. Okay, if you do want to connect them together. All right, so there's one more menu I want to show you really quick. Okay, so watch this. So when I am in my GUI, I play it. When I right click, look, nothing happens. Okay, so you may have thought, hey, the right click menu is just a Windows thing or a Mac thing, but it's not necessarily, right? It depends on the particular program implementing. Okay, so I don't have any action that should occur when I right click or even left click for this matter, right? Over here I have a left click one, right? It does something. It's checking this hot sauce or unchecking it. The code was still there, yeah. Okay, but if I want to right click, this is this very last guy, okay? So we'll finish with this. It is the JPopupMenu, okay? So the way that this works is I'm going to click on JPopup. I think it's going to break again. I can already tell it's not responding. And I simply want to add it to the control I want to. I don't know if it did it or not. Let's try it right there. Oh, no, that's not it. All right, so this is a window builder. Sometimes it doesn't do what you want it to do. So if you experience these problems, you're not the only one. Let's see if I can do this right before we leave. Okay, so let's go, let me try it one more time. So if I go on menu and then I do JPopup, okay, now I can click on a certain component. Okay, so I click there and it kind of adds this little bonus thing there, right? When I play it, you're going to see that's not there. It's not in the corner. This is just kind of for the designer view. But I can add a menu item now. So I say, all right, JMenuItem, And I might say something like this. I'll say paste. Okay. So now, when I click anywhere inside this control, I have paste. But notice I can't click here because this is something different, right? It has to be in this control. Okay, so I could add that here if I wanted, right? So here's another right click, and maybe I add do something. Okay, so now I right click here, and I get to do something. Okay. All right. So tomorrow, yeah. Question.
If you have your options set to switch left and right click, like in the overall Windows OS, will it automatically switch in order?
I don't know, because it actually does. It adds code automatically for me to do a left or right click on here. I'm thinking it's probably whatever's default. I don't know. I would be surprised if it read your system, to be honest.
That's one of the reasons why people use Java, so that you can do stuff like that.
Yeah. Or you just want to override the default system behavior.
See you guys tomorrow.
Yeah. It basically will be a very simple window builder. Quiz.
So we don't really need our book. Do we need it for the problems or?
No, everything's just GUI. So at this point, I can set both of these radio buttons at the same time. If I don't want that to happen, then I simply click them, and then I add button group, new standard. So now, when I click these guys, only one is selected. Perfect.